Hey guys! Welcome to episode 3, the final episode of A Formula One Fan's Guide to IndyCar 2026. I'm Jess, an F1 and IndyCar content creator, and in this video we'll be breaking down the 6 main technical differences between Formula One and IndyCar headed into the 2026 season. If you've missed the previous 2 episodes in this series, go check those out. Essentially, you're already a Formula One fan. I'm going to assume you already know certain things, so this is not going to be a complete technical breakdown of either series. Like, I'm not explaining what tire deg is, but these are the 6 main technical differences that I think you should know. By the end of this episode, you'll be well acquainted with the 2026 grid, except for the second Dale coin seat. I digress. How an IndyCar race weekend works, and enough about the tech specs to be ready for opening weekend in St. Pete. Maybe the second Dale coin seat was the friends we made along the way. Or cut to the animation. The first thing to understand about IndyCar is, while I would argue that Formula One is about optimizing technology, IndyCar is about optimizing the racing itself. What do I mean by that? Every F1 fan at some point has argued some version of put them in equal machinery and we'll see what they can do to some random drunk man at a bar on a Tuesday night. Just me? So the main difference, number 1, is that Formula One is a constructor series while IndyCar is a spec series. For the purpose of this video, I'm mostly going to be using the downforce error regulations in cars because it's what we're most familiar with at this point. Formula One engineers are tasked with designing chassis within FIA regulations that can potentially lead to huge aerodynamic variances between the cars. They all have their own names. The MCL39, the RB21, the FW47, and have complex differences in how parts like the rear wings, front wings, side pods, etc. are designed. In IndyCar, everybody runs the same chassis, the Dallara DW12. Races are won between setup choices, strategy calls, driver performance, and a little bit of luck. Now, there are a number of things on the Dallara that can be changed or optimized, like dampers, brake balance, suspension, ride height, weight distribution. But ultimately, IndyCar is a game of execution, not necessarily innovation. The second difference is the utilization of engines and power units. In Formula One in 2025, we saw all of the teams run a 1.6-liter turbocharged V6 hybrid power unit manufactured by either Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda, or Renault. Rest in peace, the Renault power unit. IndyCars run a 2.2-liter twin turbocharged V6, much less complex hybrid power unit from either Chevy or Honda. The other thing I'll mention here is what's called push to pass. In Formula One, we've obviously been hearing about the change from DRS to manual override mode, or MOM, or overtake mode, or whatever they end up calling it. DRS was an aerodynamic aid that physically changed the rear wing of the car, while manual override mode is all about actual power deployment. This will end up, philosophically, being much more similar to how IndyCars operate with push to pass. There are a few rules when it comes to how and when push to pass is used, but mostly you just need to know that it's a feature that allows the driver to press and hold a button on the steering wheel to temporarily increase engine power. The catch is there is a limit to how long you can hold the button, between 150 to 200 seconds, depending on the race. This is, of course, a major part of their race strategy, when and for how long they decide to use it. Speaking of hybrids, the third difference is fueling and refueling. In a Formula One race, cars have been limited to 110 kilograms of fuel. Ever since they did away with refueling in 2010, fuel saving has become a core part of their race management. This is where we get things like lift and coast and short shifting. In IndyCar, refueling strategy is flexible and situational. There is no fixed limit on refueling, and the act of doing so mostly just impacts stint length and pit windows. Higher fuel burn equals higher output equals more flat out racing. You know where I'm going with this. Fuel in Formula One is a power limiter. In IndyCar, it's a strategy tool. Number 4, braking and handling. This is the most technical point I'm going to make here, so strap in. In Formula One, braking is very, very heavily tied to energy management. If you've delved into the 2026 regulations, you know that this is even more true now with the elimination of the MGU-H and the heavier reliance on the MGU-K. When an F1 driver hits the brake pedal, how hard they brake, where they brake, and how long they stay on the pedal all affect how much energy they recover for later in the lap. The driver is never directly commanding rear brake brake pressure in a simple mechanical sense. They're requesting deceleration, and the car actually decides how much of that comes from energy versus friction. And a brake-by-wire system actually blends the two. IndyCar braking is much more direct. There's no energy harvesting, there's no brake-by-wire logic. The pedal maps almost linearly to the brake force. That doesn't mean it's easy, especially on street circuits. But it does mean the feedback loop between foot and tire is simpler and more intuitive. Because IndyCars rely less on downforce, braking distances are longer and peak deceleration is lower. Drivers tend to brake a bit earlier and carry braking deeper into the corner, leaning more on mechanical grip. The systems are also designed to be a little bit more tolerant. The brakes operate across a wider temperature range, and slight inconsistencies in application don't immediately kill your lap time the way they do in Formula One. Even more obvious, of course, is the difference in power steering, or lack thereof. If you took power steering out of a Formula One car, it would be practically impossible to handle at high speeds, let alone the duration of an entire race. Now, because Indy cars generate much less downforce and front end load, their steering is still mechanical. Every steering input is transmitted directly from the steering wheel to the front tires, which fundamentally changes the relationship between the driver and the car. Now, what the driver gets in return is extremely raw feedback. Tire scrub, bumps, curb strikes, surface changes, and grip loss are all transmitted directly through the wheel. That is why IndyCar onboards might look a little shakier. There's no hydraulic system filtering any of those signals. The drivers are dealing with and correcting every movement themselves. All right, take a deep breath, grab a snack, reset. Difference number 5. You've been waiting for this one. Tires. Tires in Formula One. Pirelli, of course, decides which tires to bring to a race. You've got softs, mediums, hards, plus intermediates or wets to choose from. Quite the array. IndyCar, primary, alternate, rain, supplied by Firestone. That is it. Each compound has a pretty clear job. The primary tires have black sidewalls and are your predictable, long stint, durable tires. Not as grippy, but degrades less over time. Alternate tires with red sidewalls are your faster, grippier option. They degrade much more quickly, especially on street circuits. Rain tires, you know the drill. Their tread pattern allows for better grip and hydroplaning resistance in wet conditions. IndyCar requires each car to use both compounds of tires during a race unless conditions interfere. When it comes to strategy, we obviously see some similarities to F1. Sometimes we might see a driver get the alternates out of the way and pit super early. Esteban Ocon and a Haas, I'm looking at you, babes. Undercuts, gambling a bit, hoping to change tires under a caution. You get it. Lastly, difference number 6. Let's talk about some safety features. We've all seen our fair share of nasty crashes where these cars flip upside down and roll. It's the reality of the sport. In terms of recent crashes, I'm sure many of our minds immediately go to Zhou Guanyu's major crash in 2022 at Silverstone, or even Yuki's crash last year at Imola. For IndyCar, I immediately think of Colton Herta's Indy 500 qualifying crash from last year. Brutal. And we all say in unison, thank God for the halo. The way the Formula One halo is built, it's not just rollover protection. It's a forward-facing titanium structure that also technically protects from debris or, you know, potentially another car sliding over the top of the cockpit. There's the obvious central pillar running down the driver's line of sight, and then the 2 rear mounting points that are tied directly to the back. So, what's the difference in how Indy cars protect their drivers structurally? Indy cars are built with what's called a roll hoop and an aero screen. The roll hoop sits behind the driver's head and is primarily a rollover protection device. Its sole purpose is to make sure the driver's head does not touch the ground. So in order to block debris, Indy cars also have what's called an aero screen, which is essentially a transparent polycarbonate shield mounted to a structural frame over the cockpit. The aero screen obviously slightly alters airflow, cockpit temperature, and visibility, but it eliminates small debris risk almost entirely. Also, if you're curious, IndyCar drivers do still use tear-offs on their helmets. It is still an open cockpit. One quick honorable mention that isn't necessarily technical, but does fall under the umbrella of FIA regulations: super license points. Topical, of course, as there's been a recent change to the number of points IndyCar drivers earn, made interestingly enough right after Colton Herta made the decision to move to F2. Many people were arguing that the point system severely undervalued IndyCar. So headed into 2026, We now have an updated number of points that the drivers will earn here in this handy little graphic. I don't want to get too much into Colton's move. Lots of thoughts and opinions there that you can get from Reddit or a news podcast or something. I personally hope he does well. A, because I like him and I want him to succeed. The move to F2 is a massive gamble and it can do amazing things to get another American into F1 or not. And B, because I want his experience to reflect well on IndyCar and not negatively contribute to the, F1 superiority complex. Fingers crossed. All right, guys, I think that's it. Look, there are obviously some more detailed differences that you can dig into if you're interested. Gearboxes, braking and hydraulics, all that. But I feel like if you've watched all three of these videos, you should pretty much be able to understand and appreciate watching your first IndyCar race in 2026. The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Pete is the season opener this year, and it's coming up pretty quickly from February 27th to March 1st. It's a 14-turn street circuit that includes a little bit of the runway of the Albert Whitted Airport. Pretty cool if you ask me. The race will air at 12 p.m. EST on Fox, and as always, I recommend downloading the IndyCar app for onboards, radios, and extra little bits. Let me know in the comments if you're planning on attending any IndyCar races this year, and maybe I'll see you there. Bye! You did it! So proud of you! My name's Jess, and you've been watching IndyCar. Can you imagine if Alex Blow said "Slay the house down boots" in his little accent? He's gonna sound like the yoo-hoo, big summer blowout. Okay, I've been in this chair far too long. Gotta go.